Welcome to meeting number 114 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. All witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. I'd like to remind all members of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and all comments should be directed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of floor, English or French. Thank you all for your cooperation. Pursuant to Standing Order 1083I and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, October 31st, 2024, the committee resumes its study of the impact of the criteria for awarding federal funding on research excellence in Canada. It's now my pleasure to welcome, as an individual, Dr. Heather Exner-Pirot, Director of Energy, Natural Resources, and the Environment, Macdonald-Laurier Institute by video conference, Dr. Philip Kitcher, Don Dewey Professor Emeritus of Philosophy by video conference, and Dr. John Robson, who's here with us in person, the Executive Director of Climate Discussion Nexus. So welcome to you all. Up to 5 minutes will be given for opening remarks, after which we will proceed with rounds of questions. Dr. Exner-Pirot, I invite you to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee, for inviting me to testify on this important topic. I interpret the study as assessing whether particular subjective or ideological considerations are distorting the type of research being pursued and funded in Canada today. I share my perspective as someone who has been a principal applicant, co-applicant, and collaborator on several successful as well as unsuccessful SSHRC grants. In addition, I spent several years in administrative positions at the University of Saskatchewan in roles that could be described as DEI focused with regard to Indigenous education programs and initiatives. But as a senior fellow at a think tank, rather than a faculty member at a university, perhaps I may provide an outside observer's perspectives on the ideological bias that has permeated our research systems as someone who neither needs nor wants to conform to it anymore. It has become the trend in recent years for research funding programs and faculty hiring processes to require applicants to describe their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI principles. As the SSHRC website states, DEI principles must be integrated into research design. This can occur in different ways, such as through intersectional analysis, gender-based analysis plus, anti-racist and anti-ableist approaches, and disaggregated data collection. The University Affairs website provides guidance to prospective academics on drafting DEI statements. It suggests that if you're new to thinking about DEI and haven't considered how multiple overlapping systems of privilege or oppression may shape your point of view, consider pursuing some training. And furthermore, if you've not engaged in anti-racist service or research, think deeply about why you haven't engaged in these activities and what blind spots you may have because of your lack of engagement. I don't imagine many people are against diversity, inclusion, and equity in principle. I personally am not. But if I may quote Harvard Law School Professor Randall L. Kennedy, the diversity statement regime leans heavily and tendentiously towards varieties of academic leftism and implicitly discourages candidates who harbor ideologically conservative dispositions. As MLI Senior Fellow and Associate Professor in Political Science at the University of Guelph, Dave Snow has written in The Hub, there are currently several SSHRC funding streams that invite research that subscribe to a particular worldview to the exclusion of others. These include grants to study shifting dynamics of privilege and marginalization, and the Race, Gender, and Diversity Initiative. I do not intend to make a straw man of the various research streams that our agencies fund, nor imply that good research is neither conducted nor supported. I do not intend to mock or undermine the objectives of inclusivity, diversity, and equity. But the phenomenon of DEI has, in my opinion, and that of many others, gone too far in narrowing and directing the kinds of research pursued in Canada to the exclusion of many other worthy avenues of research. My own think tank, the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, has evaluated the ideological bias in Canadian universities. I know you've heard from Professor Dummett. They found that in a survey conducted by Leisure, 88% of professors identified as left-leaning versus only 12% on the right, clearly not representative of the political leanings of the Canadian public. South of the border, this has led to pushback, and several prominent universities, including Harvard, MIT, and most recently the University of Michigan, no longer require diversity statements for faculty members during hiring or promotion. Several right-leaning states have banned DEI programs at state-funded universities. If I may conclude on a personal note, my own research has often focused on Indigenous and Northern development, human security, and resource extraction, and I have co-authored many op-eds, peer-reviewed papers, and edited volumes with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit colleagues. Ostensibly, these are encouraged topics. However, I've often felt that the kinds of questions I'm interested in and the conclusions I draw do not fit into the conventional Canadian academic space. I think many people like me have been excluded or have selected to work in the private sector, consulting, or think tank world because we do not feel at home in universities. I think this self-selection will be demonstrated even more acutely in the emerging generation of Canadian scholars, and that the problem will get worse before it gets better. I do not think this sorting based on a political ideology is desirable, and I do not think it lends itself to research excellence. As our elected representatives, you play an important role in ensuring our federal research funding system reflects the aspirations and needs of our society and economy. I expect it would be difficult to explain and justify the criteria by which some of our research funding is allocated to many of your constituents. I hope your oversight can help recalibrate our research funding models to become more interested in outcomes than processes and maintain a focus on the creation and dissemination of objective, falsifiable research knowledge. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. We'll now turn to Dr. Kitcher. I invite you to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. And first of all, let me thank you for inviting me. Unfortunately, when I set this up, I thought that we would be finished by 4:30, and I have another appointment, I'm afraid, at 5:30. So let me just say that at the beginning. So, in general, there is a big question about how governments support scientific research. Surely what they want to do, if they are thinking clearly and if they are thinking ethically, is to try to find and help those researchers who are likely to contribute to the public good. Now, it's easy to make silly and short-sighted decisions with respect to these issues, because one can, of course, try to take a direct approach to a very serious problem and neglect basic research. So I want to begin by saying that one of the real lessons of 20th century science is the way in which the route to work that really does contribute to the general good may be long and indirect. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing to say is that there are deep ethical issues here. There is no avoiding taking account of the needs and the differences in needs among the population of a nation. It is impossible, I think, to act correctly in funding without taking into account the fact that different research may affect different groups differently. There have been, in the past, pieces of funded research that have done considerable harm. It's often thought, of course, that much research doesn't do much particular good, and that is vulnerable to the error that I diagnosed to begin with, the error of not being patient, not recognizing that some things need to emerge slowly. But more importantly, in the age of AI, it is especially necessary to think about the consequences of research and how various groups will be affected. And it's at this point, I think, that one has to take into account the fact that within a nation like Canada, many groups have historically been neglected. But the ethical thing is not necessarily to go overboard in responding by, as it were, directing all resources towards that population. That population deserves help, but so do other populations in the country deserve a fair shake. I have seen in my own country, the United States, an overemphasis on the needs of certain groups at certain times. And I have to say, the subordination of many needy groups to the interests of people who are already well off. This is an ethical tragedy. And one cannot get away from the fact that it's necessary to reintroduce into democratic policymaking the ethical stance. And so what I want to urge you to do is to represent all the various groups who might be affected by a given program of scientific research in your thinking. I don't think we are going to get anywhere in crafting fair policies in, complex, multicultural societies today, unless there is a lot more discussion to identify the needs of different segments of the population and to respond to those who are neediest without neglecting others. So this, I think, is an extremely complex task. There is no getting away from ethics. There is, and should be, getting away from ideology. And the important thing to do is to find a way to distinguish between ideologies and ideological responses and ethical responses. And that, I think, can only be done by thorough and repeated democratic discussion. There's no shortcut to that either. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kitcher, and I just want to let you know that if when the time comes you need to leave, you can always submit a brief to us with further comments and testimony that we can attach to our report. What time would you have to leave approximately?
Just before 5:30.
Oh, just before 5:30? Oh, that's
Yes.
fine. Okay.
Good.
Okay, great. We're now then going to turn to Dr. Robson. I invite you to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to address the committee. I'm here as a citizen and also as somebody deeply embedded in academia. I've taught at 4 North American universities. My parents are professors, my grandfather, my uncle, 2 cousins. And despite that, I'm here to say that in considering the criteria for funding advanced research, what you need to do is get rid of the criteria and the funding. It's not the business of the federal government. And I say that for 2 reasons. And the first of those is that as members of parliament, you have critical responsibilities to the citizens. We elect you. You're the only part of the entire state apparatus that we have input on. And most of your core responsibilities are in a horrendous mess. And you need to get back to them. Now, the amount that you're spending on post-secondary education is making the mess there worse. So this is win-win. It's a provincial responsibility. Je crois que les députés du Bloc sont encore là. And yet somehow the feds are spending roughly $15 billion on it. And this at a time when the nation is over $1 trillion in debt. So you need to get back to things like balancing the budget. And I just looked at recent news stories. I'm just going to draw on very recent ones. We just got this bizarre Christmas tax break. It's going to save us each $4.51 and cost business millions to administer. So you guys need to be fixing the tax code, not genetic codes. And then there's defending the realm. This nation is defenseless, not just in the Arctic, but everywhere. Our military is in ruins. So you shouldn't be thinking about antimatter. You should be thinking about ammunition and getting us someone to fire it. Or infrastructure. I just saw a story that Via Rail is consuming $1,000 a passenger and can't make the trains run on time. And I was in an airport. We just hailed International Civil Aviation Day. Our airports have lousy Wi-Fi and no plugs. Or another story, the government just promised drinking water on Aboriginal reserves. Well, that's a core responsibility. Tap water, not heavy water. Now, and then there's the federal court saying they're going to have to curtail hearings because they haven't got staff and they haven't got funding. Justice is as core a duty of government as you could find other than national defense. And this is the kind of thing that the 338 members of parliament need to be on full time. You shouldn't be chasing laser beams. It's not even in your jurisdiction. You don't have time for it. And I don't really think,
Madame la Présidente,
in fact,
Madame la Présidente, Madame la Présidente, s'il vous plaît. Ouais, en fait, c'est parce que j'entends les deux interprétations
I'm
dans la
hearing
oreillette.
both audio signals in my ear. It's very difficult to do something about it. I'm hearing both voices, English and French, in my ear. Can you please correct that?
Oh, is there another set?
Vous pensez que c'est l'oreillette?
You think it's the earpiece? It's not the signal?
Attends, j'étais le seul, là?
Am I the only one?
Je pense que vous êtes le
Je
seul.
suis le seul francophone ici.
I'm the only francophone here?
Quelle histoire, quelle histoire.
That's crazy.
Non, je sais.
What am I going to do about this? I'm the only francophone here.
Oui, je comprends pas l'anglais. C'est un pays officiellement bilingue.
It's a country that's officially bilingual. It doesn't show, but it's still officially bilingual on paper anyway.
Je le sais bien, on dit bienvenue. Et puis on
Welcome.
parle anglais.
Merveilleux. Ça marche
I-
très
I
bien.
speak
au
English.
Québec, au Nouveau-Brunswick, mais en dehors,
In Quebec, New Brunswick, bilingualism is fine, but elsewhere it's a bit problematic.
Sort out what's happening here
OK,
with the
c'est
audio
bon.
for you.
C'est bon.
So Okay, so we have a little change of plan between the glitches and the votes. We're going to dismiss the second panel today because unfortunately, I don't think we'll get to it. You're certainly welcome to stay if that works with your schedule. We'll have to reschedule you to come, either Thursday or another day. So now we will continue. I stopped the clock for who? Oh, Mr. Robson, you had another 2 minutes left in your opening statement if you'd like to continue. Thank you.
Thank you, merci. Je vais finir par dire, you have so many vital things you have to do. You're a critical link in the government. And as you see, you are overstretched. If we cannot provide translation in this meeting, you're not really shouldn't be really be involved in
Madame la
confusion.
Présidente, Madame la Présidente,
Now,
le problème n'est pas réglé.
Madam Chair, there's still a
Le problème n'est
problem.
pas réglé, je comprends rien.
I don't understand a
Je comprends
thing.
rien du tout.
I am not
J'entends
understanding
monsieur qui
anything.
parle, puis
Between
quelques voix dans le-
this gentleman who's speaking, I'm hearing two voices at the same time, and I'm not understanding anything.
We'll suspend while we try again to sort this out.